start with our weekly roundup brought to you by Crypto Compare. So it was a super bullish week for Bitcoin. On Monday, the Bitcoin price was hovering around the $11,300 mark and started a rally that lasted for 4 days, reaching a high of 17,250 on Friday. After reaching the new all-time high, the price started to decline gradually. It reached a low of 13,050 on Sunday. And on the same Sunday evening, the Chicago Board Options Exchange, CBOE, launched its first Bitcoin futures contract, which coincided with a sudden surge in the price of Bitcoin. Bitcoin's value has been climbing since the opening of CBOE's futures markets. Experts believe that CBOE and CME Group's Bitcoin-based future products have been injecting optimism into the markets. Currently, the Bitcoin price is sitting at around $16,500, representing a gain of just 66.53%, not much in the crypto world, over the last 2 weeks. Bitcoin's global trade volume is through the roof, however, averaging over $14.6 billion worth of BTC in the last 24 hours alone. The Japanese yen is still leading the market share by 42%, but the US dollar has increased by 29%, again according to figures by Crypto Compare. Now on to Ethereum, the second most valuable blockchain by market cap. Ethereum has encountered severe disruptions during the week due to a traffic increase caused by a digital cat breeding decentralized app called CryptoKitties. Yes, this is true. The Ethereum app has become wildly popular, and their use and trading has brought the network to a crawl. At present time, the Ether price is sitting around $525, representing a gain of just over 9% for the last 2 weeks, according to figures from Crypto Compare. Now the news, the race to launch the first regulated Bitcoin futures market has been won by CBOE, the Chicago Board Options Exchange that we mentioned earlier. They moved their launch date forward to the 10th, which was a full week ahead of the CME launch, their competitor. Despite the website crashing during the opening 30 minutes, the actual trading went smoothly, and they traded over 3,000 BTC in the first day. The Tokyo Financial Exchange, TFX, is making preparatory measures towards offering Bitcoin derivatives also, likely prompted by announcements by US rivals last week that they would begin trading Bitcoin futures before the year end. Ameritrade and Ally Invest have publicly stated they plan to offer access to Bitcoin futures trading as soon as they become available to them. Together, these two brokers serve over 7 million retail US traders, Ameritrade with 6.9 million funded customer accounts, with Ally having around 250,000. So the SEC regulators have stepped in to halt a scam ICO called Plexcoin, citing marketing materials that promised investors could net a 1,354% profit on their holdings in less than 29 days. The SEC charged Plex Corp with violating anti-fraud regulations connected with the ICO. Plex Corp were also charged with violating the requirement to register all security offerings with the SEC. And then a week later, another ICO called Munchie, which is a restaurant reviewing app, was halted as it gave investors an expectation of profits, which trumped its use case as a utility coin as a defense. The upshot of this statement is that any utility ICO that is not functional is likely to be deemed as a security. Now on to another big institutional behemoth, Goldman Sachs, the investment banking company. They will begin trading Bitcoin futures for its clients once major exchanges list Bitcoin futures in the upcoming weeks. Bitcoin futures trades made by Goldman Sachs on behalf of its clients will be processed on a case-by-case basis. In a statement, Goldman Sachs spokeswoman Tiffany Galvin said, "Given that this is a new product, as expected, we're evaluating the specifications and risk attributes for the Bitcoin futures contracts as part of our standard due diligence process." And the Bulgarian government have arrested 23 nationals and seized a staggering 213,000 Bitcoins from the organized crime network. This occurred in May, and the haul is now worth $3.5 billion, which is almost a third of Bulgaria's national debt. One could argue that Bulgaria, technically holding Bitcoin, as a reserve currency. And NiceHash, a Slovenian cryptocurrency mining marketplace, suffered a hack of 4,700 BTC, which is currently worth around $78 million. The Bitcoin was stored on a hot wallet, which means that the private keys were exposed to the internet and therefore more vulnerable to hacking. NiceHash have said that they are committing every resource towards solving this issue as soon as possible. And that concludes our weekly roundup, brought to you by Crypto Compare. Yeah, I'd like to welcome to the show Mo Tayeb, the COO of MedicalChain. Thanks for being here, Mo.
Thank you for having us.
Pleasure. MedicalChain is quite an interesting project. You guys are tackling an area that is, many would say, in much need of innovation, really helping out the NHS in a lot of ways, right? Can you give us just a kind of high-level, overview of what MedicalChain is aiming to do?
Sure, Adam. So MedicalChain is a blockchain platform for the storage and utilization of electronic health records. We're also adding on that the various applications, which are the utility functions of the health record. And the first application we're starting with is a telemedicine application. Mm-hmm. So electronic health records already exist, far and wide, and in most European and North American hospitals, you'll find electronic health records exist. However, there are many problems with the data storage, the security, and really mainly the accessibility of it. So if nowadays we are a nation of expats and everybody travels a lot. And when you travel, you take on your phone with you your calendar and emails and access to your photos and music and your online banking. But your health record, which is potentially something quite life-saving, tends to stay with the last doctor that you saw. Mm-hmm. And so with MedicalChain, we are providing access to your health record, which is stored on a blockchain. It's an international network of node verifiers. It's a blockchain network that's run using the Hyperledger blockchain, and it allows you to access your health record and share it with a doctor of your choice and have that doctor add information to it about any consultation or surgery or anything you may have done, you've had done.
Great. So, I mean, really, what you guys are doing is using, blockchain and the invention of Bitcoin to make medical records safer, as opposed to what we've seen recently, which is the hijacking of medical records, presumably because they've been stored on a centralized exchange, right?
Yeah, on centralized storage. So earlier this year, we had the WannaCry attack, which affected, I think hundreds of hospitals around the world. And our CEO, Dr. Bayati, he's a doctor in the NHS, and he had to turn patients away on those days when the WannaCry attack was happening, because they could not access their health records, so they could not see them for consultations. Some were awaiting surgery; they couldn't get their surgery done because their health records were locked away. I mean, so hopefully, when you have these health records owned by you, you're much more control over it.
So what will the MedicalChain service look like? Will there be an app for the phone? Will it be online, desktop, and
That's
on
right.
the phone?
It'll be a combination of all. So there will be apps on Android, iPhone, and you'll have them on desktop as well. So as a patient, you've got access to your health record through an app, and you can grant access to a doctor or any healthcare professional of your choice, and that access is on a time-limited basis. So if you're no longer getting consultation by a doctor, that doctor, in theory, shouldn't have access to your health record, so you can revoke that access.
Great.
The doctor who's treating you might want to access your health record on a bigger screen, so they'll be using a desktop application, and they can communicate with you through the interface of MedicalChain.
So this is really aiming to kind of reduce the need for people to actually go to a hospital. Potentially, we could see a lot more people, as we're already starting to see with a few other apps being kind of having consultations from home and being treated from home remotely.
Right. So telemedicine itself is currently a $28 billion industry, and about 50% of that is North America. 25% is in Europe. So it's already a large industry, and it's growing. The problem with telemedicine right now is your health record doesn't exist on the applications that are available. So you can sign up to a number of providers right now and speak to the doctor online and pay them a fee, but you have to self-declare all your history.
Right.
And that's not efficient because you might not remember everything, and the doctor then might not have the correct diagnosis for you.
Yep.
So the difference with our application is on MedicalChain, your health record is there, and you've got a telemedicine application, you can connect to a doctor, and that doctor can see your health records while they're speaking with you.
Fantastic. And so you guys are doing an ICO. So you're issuing a coin, which is the Med coin.
It's the Med token.
Med token.
Yep.
Sorry. So the Med token is going to be used, within the app and the platform. So can you explain kind of how that works? What is this token's utility?
So the Med token is a utility for transfer of value and services on the platform. And there are certain transactions that are taking place on the platform, and they will be done using the Med token.
Okay.
So the first thing is connecting to a doctor and speaking with them, getting a consultation. That will be one of the utilities of the token. Another function in future, we plan to, after having a mass or a critical mass of health records there, we will start introducing a marketplace for health records to pharma companies who want to contact patients for clinical trials, and they will be paid for providing access to their health record using Med tokens as well. Furthermore, we are providing an SDK for app developers in the next 6 months, and that SDK will allow many bright and really amazing apps out there right now to connect to the MedicalChain platform and provide apps to people who've got their health record on the platform, so they can not only just have their health record there, but also have a dashboard that will be updated in real time with some useful information about their health record. And obviously, there are transactions have to take place, and they will also be using Med tokens.
That sounds great. So not only can people gain more control over their medical records, but they can also actually, kind of earn by providing them to other people and for research.
Right.
And
yeah. I mean, the primary goal here is we believe your medical record shouldn't be something that you just access when you're ill. It should be something that you always refer to. And one thing to bear in mind is there are many people who've got smart wearable devices, like an Apple Watch or an Android Wear device or a Fitbit, that's always collecting data about you. But that data is normally stored in silos. So what we want to do is have that data also put in your health record.
Right.
So when you go to see a doctor next time, they have a dashboard of what you've been up to, not just the last blood test or X-ray they may have had.
Yeah. I don't even think most people know that the medical records are available. They probably just think that the doctor has it.
Yeah. Well, you'd be surprised about how dispersed it is.
Yeah. That's great. So you've been traveling around the world, promoting, talking to people about MedicalChain. What's the reaction been like?
It's been really humbling and really amazing to see how much need there is for this kind of a utility, and we are doing well right now in Asia. So in Asia, particularly in countries like Japan, there is an aging population. Japan's got probably the biggest aging population in the world, and they also have the highest life expectancy in the world. So they really care about medical innovation and accessibility to their medical data. So in places like that, it's been really nice to see the reaction to a service like MedicalChain to come to market. And we've also been in the US, where we're talking to many potential partners in the US, and we've signed quite a few MOUs and NDAs with them to get them to use the platform. So we recognize wherever you go, there's a massive need for this. And I've traveled to about almost 15 countries in the last 8 weeks.
Wow.
On the roadshow, and we continue to have we have a fully booked schedule for the next 3 months.
Wow.
So we are continuously going back to visit and have more meetups and more conversations, because ultimately what we want to do is not just promote the ICO, but we're really trying to promote to doctors and other healthcare professionals to come and use the platform.
Yeah, absolutely. And you've been working with some advisors from the blockchain space, right?
Correct.
I understand
Yeah.
you're working
Yeah.
with Coinsilium, so they've been putting you in touch with guys within the blockchain space and kind of helping you out, taking you to various different events and things like that, right?
Absolutely. It's very important to have a good team and the right advisors on board. So we have worked with Coinsilium now for some time. We've been to, as you said, we've been to quite a few events and meetups with them. They've also made some very useful introductions to us in the blockchain space and have guided us towards the utilization of the token.
Yeah.
Blockchain is a new space and nobody can pretend to know everything.
Yeah.
So it's very important to work with some very smart people who've got some experience and have been there and done the things you're trying to do.
Sure. So, okay, just finally, the token sale itself,
Yeah.
What are the dates for that if people want to buy Med token?
So currently we're in December, we're doing our pre-sale.
Yeah.
That will run into January. And at the beginning of February we'll have our ICO. So, if anyone wants to participate in the pre-sale, they can go to our website and join the whitelist. And the ICO will be in February. And we hope to be listed on an exchange at the beginning of March.
Okay, fantastic. So you heard it here first, guys. Beginning of February, get your Med tokens. Mo, thank you very much for joining us. It's been a pleasure.
Thank you.
Cheers. Hello and welcome to the Blockchain and Crypto Show. My name's Adam Jason and today I'm joined by the CEO of Coinsilium, Eddy Travia, for our educational piece. Welcome, Eddy.
Thank you, Adam.
Pleasure to see you again. So Bitcoin is on everyone's lips at the moment. It's a very hot topic. A lot of people are buying into Bitcoin without maybe fully understanding, what the technology is that is so innovative and that's causing all of this enthusiasm. So if we kind of take it back to the start, just to kind of help people understand really why is Bitcoin special. So one of the key things that Bitcoin allows is the solving of this double spend problem, right? So what exactly is that? What's the innovation there technologically that's so special?
Well, it's not the first time that developers and people from the cryptography world have tried to solve the double spending problem and to create something like a digital cash. So basically value that can be transmitted digitally.
Yeah.
Obviously, as we all know, we all have phones and we all share files on our computers. So we know that a digital file is quite easy to be replicated almost in an infinite way.
Yeah.
So when Bitcoin came out in January 2009, the actual innovation was a blockchain technology. So basically, without blockchain, a Bitcoin is not that valuable because otherwise it would be the same problem as the first first versions of digital cash, which actually failed before that. So when you actually send Bitcoin, the transaction is recorded in a blockchain, and that means that this transaction can only be done once. And the fact that this chain of blocks, which are actually blocks of transactions, are linked to each other, make it very difficult to change anything. So that's why we call it immutable, because if you do try to change anything in these transaction records, then basically you're breaking the chain.
Yeah.
And that has not happened since the creation of Bitcoin in 2009.
Right, so you touch on there some of the previous attempts to make a form of digital cash. Maybe a lot of people don't know, but there were, some that were actually very close to Bitcoin, but didn't quite take off. And the blockchain is really the key there, as you mentioned, which a lot of people try and wrap their heads around. One analogy that I like to use, which I think is quite simple, is that the blockchain is like a shark in the sense that it keeps moving forward. So each new transaction is placed on the blockchain to go forward, but you can't retrospectively really go backwards in the blockchain, right? It's just constantly moving forward as a link or a chain of transactions.
Yes, so think about a universal ledger, a common ledger that everybody can access.
Yeah.
So when you buy your first Bitcoin, you should be able to see the transaction somewhere.
Yeah.
If you buy from an exchange, which is what most people do, the exchange has its own database of transactions and what we call an order book. And until they send it to your own wallet, so you need a wallet basically to be able to send Bitcoin and receive Bitcoin. But actually what you're doing is you're using a private key to change the ownership of the Bitcoin or a fraction of Bitcoin. I mean, it's also important to note that although Bitcoin price is very high, so these days above $15,000, you don't need that much money to come into the Bitcoin world. You can buy a fraction of a Bitcoin.
You can buy $10 worth if you want to.
Yes, and 100 million units of per Bitcoin.
Divisible,
Yes.
And when you say a wallet, you're talking about a digital wallet, right? So you mentioned there's a public key and a private key. And the private key is like the secret bit
code. Yes, like the secret code you need to sign the transaction, basically. It's very similar for people who may be aware about email, PGP. It uses the same combination of public and private key. So you basically send your address to, for example, your friend, and it doesn't make any difference where the person is located, because this common ledger of transactions is actually replicated all over the world in different computers, which we call nodes, right? So the fact that it's replicated around the world in thousands of nodes means that you need some time to propagate it. So, so when you send a Bitcoin, you will see first no confirmation or zero confirmation, and then you will see one confirmation. And so what happens in between is that basically this transaction will go into a block, and the average time between blocks is 10 minutes. And every 10 minutes, a new block of transactions is created. But the server that is actually writing these transactions onto the blockchain and adding this record onto the blockchain is being rewarded. So when the server actually mines Bitcoin, this is the action of mining, it receives right now 12.5 Bitcoin, which is actually a lot of money.
Yeah, a lot of money. And so you're touching on mining there, which again is a topic people generally like to avoid when they're first getting into the space, because it can be a bit of a minefield. Essentially, the way you explained it there, I think, is quite good, is that, you know, it's the server, it's the computer or the computing power that is used to verify the transactions on the network that is then rewarded for verifying those transactions, right?
Yes.
And that upholds the entire system, the entire network, because your transaction is being verified by, well, it could be someone anywhere, right? It could be someone in Asia, in China, in, you know,
in Canada, in Europe. So basically, around the world, there are server farms that are called, in a way, globally miners. And what they do is they provide the computational power for the hashing. So hashing is actually the actual operation for the hashing, and this computational power makes the Bitcoin network the most powerful computational network on the planet. So if you multiply the power of the supercomputers by thousands of times, you don't reach the Bitcoin network computational power. So you have a lot of dedicated servers actually only doing this hashing process, and they compute all day. It creates a lot of heat, so there is a lot of energy consumption, which is another topic that is sometimes touched upon. But in reality, you need this computational power because you don't want anyone or any hacker to actually come and do what we call a 51% attack, which means rewrite transactions or change the blockchain if they have more power than the other computers.
So the double spend that we talked about at the start can actually be done, but only if someone has enough computational power that they account for at least 51% of the entire network, right?
Yeah, that's one of the attacks. But to reassure everyone, first of all, it's an incredible amount of computational power. And secondly, since 2009, and despite the fact that Bitcoin was expensive, for example, in 2013, it went up to more than $1,000. With obviously less computational power than today, because there were less miners and difficulty increases, then you could feel that, well, it's still quite safe. It's the most resilient network out there blockchain and for transacting value over the internet.
Yeah, and also it doesn't really make sense for someone to kind of hack the network, because the value of the Bitcoin would diminish probably quite sharply if that was to happen, and therefore the thing that they'd used all this time, resources and money to, you know, steal would probably be worthless.
Yeah, it's a very it's a more complex ecosystem than people may think. There are exchanges, which are an important part, because most of the individuals, the vast majority, cannot mine, because you need to buy expensive machines dedicated to that service. So basically what you do is usually transact on an exchange to get your Bitcoin, and then you can sell it and buy it on different platforms, trading platforms. So this is part of the ecosystem. Then you have the supplier of the chips doing the mining, and then you have the suppliers of hardware. You have hardware wallets as well. So I think it's important to explain to everyone listening is that the responsibility of keeping your Bitcoin safe relies on you. So as long as the Bitcoin is not on an exchange, it's on your personal wallet, you have to make sure that you keep it safe. Keeping it safe means keeping your private key safe. It's the same thing. If you lose your private key, chances are you lose your Bitcoin. And there are hard wallets out there, for example, meant to protect the private key more securely.
Sure, so you have to have your private key. Got it.
Coinsilium is basically an investor and accelerator. We don't promote the use of any digital currency. What we do is we invest in companies, and some of these companies may be involved in digital currencies. Some of them, I would say most of them, are actually involved in the technology. So blockchain has many applications in technologies, with or without Bitcoin, with or without any digital currency or any digital tokens. But we'll keep that for another topic.
Another time. Well, Eddy, it's been a pleasure. Thank you for joining us. And we'll see you next time on the Blockchain and Crypto Show.